Hey guys, it's Lewis from Recycle Bicycle Sales here. In today's video, we're going to talk about how to wash your bike at home. It's super important to keep your bike nice and clean. Whenever somebody's buying a bike and they're asking, how often should I get my bike serviced? I always respond by saying the best thing that you can do between services is to simply keep it clean. Keeping your bike clean will help prolong the life of different components, whether we're talking about the frame or whether we're talking about the wheels or just in general, all the different moving parts. So the best thing you can do is keep your bike clean. And we all know that a clean bike is a fast bike. Step one is if your bike is totally caked in mud, you might need to hose it down. If you're a mountain biker and maybe you've been riding out on the wet and muddy trails, there might be bits of mud all stuck in the wheels and stuck in the little nooks and crannies of the bike. First step, if it's caked in mud, is to perhaps rinse it off with a hose, just to get rid of the sort of big pieces of mud. However, if you're a road bike rider, this step might not be too necessary. I know that we're looking at this bike here, it's a little bit dirty, but it's not caked in mud. So I don't think we need to hose it off. We'll just skip across to step number two. Step number two is to clean the frame. The reason that I like to start with the frame is I think that that's usually the sort of least dirty part. So when we're using our rags, we can sort of clean the cleanest part, I suppose, and then work our way across to the dirtier part, like the chain perhaps. So start with the frame. The way that I like to do it is I've got two different rags. I've got one that's a little bit dirty, I suppose, and then one that's like brand new and clean so I can like detail the bike when I'm ready. What I like to do is literally spray onto the frame with like some sort of bike cleaner. I just use like the muck off bike spray here. But if you're doing it at home and perhaps you're working over carpet and you don't want to use a spray, you could always use a set of bikey wipes. They're like these little wipes that you can pull out. They're like baby wipes, but for your bike, hence the name bikey wipes. And you can sort of wipe the whole frame down. So the way that I like to sort of spray the bike is I sort of just want to wet the whole thing. It's not about like soaking it or anything. It's just simply about wetting the whole frame, and you want to try and do both sides as well. And another spot that often gets neglected by some people is the down tube. If you're walking your bike along doing a wheelie, the down tube is the part that everybody's looking at. So I always like to make sure I do that part too. So all I've done here, sprayed it on, and now I'm just going to use my not filthy, but just a little bit dirty rag, I suppose, to just wipe off that main sort of layer of the water all the way around. So I'm just trying to touch the whole frame, not trying to, or making sure that I don't miss any little spots all throughout. And all I'm doing here is just making it look good, to be honest. And I think if you've got a clean frame, the whole bike starts to look a little bit cleaner. While you're cleaning the frame, this is a really good opportunity to have a look around and see if there's any damage. I can see that on this bike here, as I'm wiping across the top tube, I can feel some bumps along here. So I can actually see that there's quite a few scratches on the top tube of the bike here. Not necessarily a big deal, but just something worth noting that I suppose I've seen while I've been cleaning this bike. Looks like it lines up pretty well with the handlebar, so they might have hit the deck at some point, unfortunately. Just something that I've noticed, I suppose. So while you're cleaning your bike, you might notice little scratches around the place. Maybe those scratches weren't there before and they happened on your most recent ride. Maybe they're scratches you already knew about. Having a good look across the bike. It's worth noting here as well, if you don't happen to have this special bike wash, to be honest, there's really nothing all that special about it. You could just use some soapy water in a little spray bottle. I like to use a spray bottle because that way I'm not like wasting any, just dripping it on the floor. The bits that I'm spraying are actually going onto the bike rather than using a big sponge, but it's more or less the same thing. This is just in a pump bottle. Step three, clean the wheels. What I like to do is I spin the wheel, doesn't have to be fast or whatever, and I'm just gonna spray a little bit on both sides. Now where I'm kind of spraying is partly on the wheel, but also partly on the tire. I'll do the same on the back in a sec. And I've purposely, without even realizing, left that for a couple of seconds on there to let it sort of soak in and sort of pick up any mud that we can. And now I'm just gonna squat down. I've just had another realization here. I'm lucky enough to have a bike work stand here. If you don't have a bike work stand at home, that's totally fine. You can just flip the bike upside down. I just like to make sure that you're able to spin the wheel. So best case scenario, get a bike stand, but it's money that you probably don't need to spend, I suppose. Or flip the bike upside down, or you could even tie a piece of rope from the roof and hang the seat from that, so that way the bike's up off the floor. It might rock around a little bit, but hey, for the $0 that it costs, I think it's worth it. I like to start at the valve, because that way I know when I've done a full revolution. All I'm doing is holding the spokes pretty aggressively, and I'm just gonna wipe back and forth on a section, and then move to the next section, wipe back and forth, and just go all the way around. Now what I'm doing here is I'm actually wiping on the rim of the wheel, and also on the tire, because because I reckon I want to make the whole thing look quite clean. You'll be quite surprised. You can detail a bike and make it look $1,000,000, but if you haven't cleaned the wheels, it might not look clean. You kind of say the same with a car. If you see a beautiful Porsche driving down the road, but it's got dirty wheels, the whole thing looks dirty. So I kind of say the same with a bike. So make sure that the wheels look good. Let's move across to the back one. When we're cleaning the wheels, you'd be pretty surprised how dirty they can be. So I like to use a somewhat dirty rag. That's why I don't clean the wheels before cleaning the frame, because I know that the wheels are gonna be one of the dirtier parts. So either grab a super dirty rag that you've got, or just save this step until after you've done the frame. Now that I've gone around and cleaned the rim, but also cleaned the tire, I just wanna sort of clean in between the spokes as well. I guess this isn't a necessity, but I like the bike to look as good as it can. While we're talking about the wheel here, again, this helps when you're able to spin the wheel a bit. I like to clean the spokes as well, because again, it just kind of makes the whole wheel look good. When we're looking at a bicycle wheel, we've got spokes on drive side and spokes on non-drive side. So I like to just focus on just one side and then focus on the other side, rather than trying to move the rag between my hands every spoke or whatever. We've got spokes that are on drive side, and I'm starting near the valve so I know when I've done one full revolution. All I'm gonna do is, with like a kind of wet part of the rag, I'm just gonna wipe up and then down the next one. And then I'm gonna come across to the next one, which is still on the same drive side, until we've done a full revolution. And now we can swap across to the spokes that are on non-drive side. And we're doing the exact same process. I'm just using the wet part of the rag to wipe up and down. Top tip, this one's not a necessity, but it shows that you really do care for your bike. Use that same wet part of the rag to wipe off the hub. And that way we can see the beautiful DT Swiss logo or whatever you have on the wheels. Step 4, with this wet part of the rag that we've been using in the previous step to wipe the spokes, I'm just gonna touch and wipe down some of the other random miscellaneous parts. When I say miscellaneous parts, I mean parts that are not considered the frame or the wheels or the drivetrain. So some of the parts that come to my mind could be maybe like the brake caliper, whether it's the rim brake or the disc brake. You might just want to wipe a little bit of the sand and muck off of that, or maybe even like the shifters or the brake levers. There's kind of no rule here about what you have to do. Just in general, the sort of different parts around the bike. Headset spaces might just make the whole bike look a little bit nicer. Maybe your saddle. If you were riding in the rain, there might be some sand and grit all up the backside, whether it's the saddle or the saddle bag or even the seat posts. So you might just want to sort of pass the rag over there. This bike doesn't look like it was ridden in the rain, so it might be okay. Could even include pedals in this, especially if you've got clip-in pedals. You've got to make sure that they're able to still move in the way that they need to. So you might just want to wipe any of the sand off of the moving parts there, but we're not too worried about the drivetrain yet. So we'll come back to doing the derailleurs and the chain in just a minute. Step number 5, we're going to clean the drivetrain. Now the drivetrain is arguably the dirtiest part of the bike. So for that reason, I'm going to be putting on some gloves. I recommend wearing some rubber gloves for this next step, because you don't want to have greasy fingers while you're trying to eat your sandwich at lunchtime. But no biggie if you don't have any, just wash your hands properly after. You'll know what I mean, your hands will be black. Now that I've got my gloves on, we can start talking about actually cleaning the drivetrain. It's worth noting in this video, we're talking about how to just clean your bike at home and just make it nice and easy. So this isn't a super in-depth video about how to completely degrease and bring your drivetrain back to life and whatever. If you want a more in-depth video about how to clean your entire drivetrain, we've got one further back on our channel. I think it actually might have been one of our most viewed and most liked and most algorithmed video, I suppose. So we've got a link in the description if you want to check it out. But to give you a very quick summary, I guess we've got different components. We've got the crankset and the derailleurs. They're sort of parts that we can more or less just wipe off, but then we might want to clean the chain with a degreaser. So I'm just going to start by wiping off the crankset and then the derailleurs as well. This is more just a make it look good kind of thing, not a make it work much better sort of thing. So we'll just start with that. Again, I'm using like a little wet part of the rag just so I can wipe off any excess dust or dirt that we've got stuck on there. And now I'm ready to clean the chain. When I'm cleaning the chain, I'm gonna use a bit of drivetrain cleaner here, just because it's a really heavy degreaser. It's also worth noting here that the step that I'm doing now, you don't have to do it after every single bike ride. It's just one of those things that you might wanna do every now and then. I don't really have an answer for how often every now and then is, but I'm just gonna wet the whole chain with this drivetrain cleaner or whatever type of degreaser that you happen to have. And you might have noticed as well, and I haven't mentioned it, that I've moved across to using a different rag. I pretty much just found the dirtiest rag that I've got, because it's almost going to be like a throwaway at the end of this. Again, if you want a more in-depth video about how to clean your drivetrain, we've got a link in the description. And without trying to sound too cocky, I think it was a pretty awesome video and it was very well received. So it might be one that you appreciate if you want to know more about how to do this step. While this rag's got some of the degreaser on it that I've been spraying on, I might just wipe over the other sections where the chain's touching. So that could be things like the jockey wheels. Maybe you've got a little bit of mud or sand or just in general grit in there. So maybe just wipe that off if you can, the bottom one and the top one. Perhaps a little bit over the top again, not something that you have to do every single time, but it's just I care for my bike, so I'm gonna take care of it kind of thing. May as well even wipe off the chain rings as well. Big one, small one, or if you're a mountain bike, you might only have one. Just trying to wipe a little bit of the dirt and excess off with a degreaser. Now that I've finished cleaning the chain, I'm just gonna move away from that super dirty section of rag to a slightly drier section. And I'm just gonna wipe off as much of that liquid as I can, maybe adjust the rag to get to a dry spot again, adjust the rag again. All I'm trying to do is just dry it a little bit here so that way when I go to apply the lubricant, it's actually gonna go on, it's not just gonna drip straight off. And now we're just gonna reapply some lubricant. All I was pretty much doing there is I just flip the bottle upside down and I'm putting my fist up against the derailleur to sort of hold the bottle still, so I'm not just like trying to hold it like this. That just helps keep balance. And I'm just doing one full revolution of the chain. It shouldn't need any more than that. Congratulations, your bike is now clean. If you want to take it one step further and do what I would call detailing the bike, that's what we can do now. Remember at the start that we had 2 rags that we were cleaning the bike with? I had one that was like kind of dirty, but kind of clean. And I had one that was like pretty much brand new. That's the one that we're gonna use now, the pretty much brand new one. So without further ado, here is the brand new rag, and I've got the same spray bottle that I used before. I can spray the bike again and give it a bit of a clean. The exact same step that we did right at the start, but just with a new rag. Or if you want to show off to your friends, you can get some like polish protect. This one is showroom polish and protect, or some sort of like special spray. There is absolutely no need for this, but it looks cool and it's another thing that you can add to your workshop wall. So it's not a necessity, but hey, we're detailing the bike and you never need to detail your bike. You just want to detail your bike. We'll just do another lap over the frame. All I'm trying to do is wet it with this polish and protect. Now it's also worth mentioning, I would imagine that this is probably one of the worst things that you can have to go onto your disc brake rotors. If you're spraying this is an aerosol can, by the way, there is gonna be a bit of spray that's just gonna find its way around the place. So it might be worth just covering the disc brake rotor with something, whether it's a brand new rag or an old t-shirt or something like that. You don't want this getting onto your disc brakes. We're literally just redoing the second step here. We're just cleaning the frame and I suppose random little components around the place. But now that the bike is clean, we're cleaning it with a clean rag. So we're just making it look that little bit nicer. So the bike was clean, but now that we've done the detail, turns out there was a little bit more dirt on there. Again, this isn't a step that you have to do, but if you want your bike to remove this final little piece of dirt, that's where the detail comes in. I reckon that about sums it up. That's pretty much everything that you need to do to wash your bike like a pro at home. If you reckon that there's anything that we've missed, let us know in the comments below. I'd love to hear about it. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.